What's going on, Flower Mound, Texas? Welcome to episode 92 of Talking Throws Podcast, Texas Style. I'm Coach Jason.
And I'm Coach Janelle.
And we are throws coaches with the track club, the Throwing Factory. Thank y'all so much for the support. We're getting up there in episodes, so we are hoping y'all like the content. Remind everybody that we have that YouTube channel, so you can go search us on YouTube. And subscribe to that, please, because we're getting a lot of views. If you want to see our bios, go to the thornfactory.com website. Remind everybody about Coach Jarvis and Coach Kai Smith. They're doing lessons, and then my guy out in Abilene, Morgan Knight, is doing private lessons as well. Just beyond shot and disc, also hammer and javelin, and also weight. And then everybody too, our shopping apparel off the thornfactory.com website. There's great discounts in sweatshirts, pullovers, zip-ups, hats, towels, whatever you need. Please go there and purchase, because the money goes to a good cause. For season 6, our sponsors, without them we couldn't do what we do. Thank Texas Track and Field Coach Association. That is ttfca.org for everything track and field. Right now we're gearing up for our high school seasons. Texas Relays is basically about a month away. Then the state meets, and that's after that. The regional meets in April, and then the Meet of Champions, I think, is May 22nd. That's going to be at Texas State University. So thanks to John Frazier for allowing that. Fourthrows.com, quality implements priced right. Right now, if you go to fourthrows.com and hit the hammer weight throw tab, right now you can find a hammer bag for $54.99. If you're looking for extra hammer wires, fourthrows.com is the place to go.
Use the code TalkingThrows10.
And use the code TalkingThrows10 to get 10% off. Also, Porta-Circle, making throwing more accessible. It's accessible, Porta-Circle.com. Use the code TalkingThrows10. We're seeing more and more of these used. People are getting good results. I had a guy come up to me over a week ago at a meet, and they don't have a throwing ring, and they put this down on a sidewalk. They put it down on a sidewalk, and so the kids, their junior high kids, can get extra reps in learning the diameter and not scratching, so to speak. So, also Ready Up Athletic Development, Zach Phillips in the greater Austin area right now. Zach is doing a program called Basic Throw Strength, that you can find that program on Trainer Roic. If you use the code THROWS10, you're going to get 20% off. That website again is Trainer Roic, and the program is called Basic Throw Strength, and that is ran by Ready Up Athletic Development. Fiber Sports Discus, without them we can't do what we do. You can go get a Fiber Sports Discus at fourthrows.com. The 2K, a low spin twister 1. Cool little bag. Thanks for Bruce Caldwell and everything he does for the throwing community in the greater Texas area. You can go to his site too if you're having questions about rim weight, fibersportsdiscus.com, and you'll be able to see all the research on that. And then also people that does all our apparel, Big Frogs Colleyville. Thank y'all for what y'all do and y'all support over the years. Guest today is currently he's a realtor in the Flower Mound area. He's also a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I can't even talk that way. He was the volunteers throws coach for Hammer at UNT from 2021 to 2022. He's currently coaching a few master throwers, and we're going to get into that. He was the throws coach at Northern Arizona University from 1989 to 91. He threw at Arizona State University from 1986 to 85. He was a national champion in the hammer at Mesa Community College. He has a lifetime PR best in the hammer, a 65.83. Please welcome to episode 92, Dave Ryer. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Well, Janelle will start us off.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on. So I get to ask the first question all the time. Tell us how you started throwing. Share with us that story.
Well, it was a little bit of an unconventional thing because, as you know, I never threw in high school.
Okay.
I was a sprinter and a pole vaulter. And as I got through with high school, I went on and started at a junior college, Mesa Community College in Arizona, and started out as a pole vaulter. And then fairly quickly, I found out that between shin splints and wanting to lift weights and body type was probably not the greatest idea to be a college pole vaulter. So I landed up seeing a guy that used to show up all the time throwing the hammer, right? A guy by the name of Mike Maynard, and he landed up coaching at UCLA and some other places. And so I thought, man, that's kind of a neat event, and I can probably go eat before I actually do this and not throw up. So that's kind of where I saw that. And then that next summer, I started training with him and meeting him out there and so forth. And then just kind of picked it up fairly quickly. When I grew up in Wisconsin before I moved to Arizona, kind of a long story. I used to work on a dairy farm, and I'd shuck bales of hay to my right, and it was I'm like, man, this is a very similar feeling when I started throwing the hammer. So, as luck has it, I ended up competing that first year in junior college and won the national championships and broke their school record at Mesa Community College and was an All-American. So that kind of led on to, I got recruited from that point and ended up going to Arizona State.
Awesome.
And
I don't mean to interrupt you, back up a little bit.
Back
How big, you talked about body, and how big were you coming from high school into your junior college?
we got a few glitches going on here, by the way.
I
So
know. Yeah, I see that. I don't know if that's us or are we glitching too? Because every once in a while yours was, and then
yeah, you glitched. I didn't hear everything you said, Jason.
Going back to you said something, about body size and eating and stuff. How big were you your first year at junior college or coming out of high school?
Okay, I was like on the smallest of the smallest size ever being a hammer thrower. I think the heaviest I ever was in the height of my career at all was I'm about 5'9.5". I weighed about 215, 218. But when I started throwing in junior college, I weighed 189 pounds.
What? Wow.
Yeah. So I threw 60 meters, 50, and I thought, man, I just threw farther than in feet what my body weight is. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's what I was sitting here thinking. I was like,
yeah,
wow, really?
Yeah, I was, that's even when I got into coaching and stuff, I always told everybody, look at the small guys. If there's a small guy in an event, thrower or whatever, and he's throwing really far, there's some technical things going on there that are doing really well for him. So, sometimes the big guys, they can get away with a lot of imperfections in their technique because of their body mass and so forth. The positives of a big guy, they got some mass, they can really get moving things, but I look at the hammer as when you find the system, it becomes kind of more of a speed event. And, not so much maybe in the discus and the shot put. I think you just need to be a fairly big guy, especially when you're throwing the college implements and so forth. But different. I think, once you can find the system, you don't have to be the biggest guy in the world, and it becomes more of a speed event. And sometimes sometimes they're a little quicker and they can get movements down a little faster than maybe a big guy.
Gotcha.
And that's how I looked at it anyway.
That's how you looked at it. And we'll get more into that. But can you tell us like your first, because you didn't probably know how to hold it, grip it.
Sure.
Was
was
Maynard trying to, were you doing a lot of drills with him that first initial?
It was all foreign to me. Yeah. We did a lot of drills. I mean, I had, from holding the hammer, like not even knowing which hand to put on it. Using a hammer glove back then, we didn't have access to a lot of equipment, so I'm cutting off the fingers of a rawhide glove at first, and finally got a real hammer glove and all that kind of stuff. we did a lot of like right-hand drills, left-hand drills, two-ball drills. I did a lot of walk-in drills. To me, that was a way to find what we call I'm a right-handed thrower, so to find the right side of the throw for me. And I feel like that was really some of the best things I've done when I started, was doing a lot of drills and a lot of walk-ins. There's a point where you've got to have some balance and you've got to throw a little bit before you break down and start drilling, because it can make you kind of mechanical and stuff. But we did a lot of that. Like every practice was very disciplined. I was fortunate enough, when I ran into Mike, he was a fairly established thrower already. But Mesa Community College had a guy by the name of Selmer Olson. He coached forever, and he had a really good eye for shot, discus, hammer, you name it. And he was a big inspiration when I first got started too. He brought a lot of things from just a wealth of experience about throwing in general, to, when I first started bringing those things to, I didn't know about like, hey, doing plyometrics, doing all these drills. I just thought, hey, go out there and just throw and throw and throw, and eventually you're going to throw farther. Not so much sometimes. So he was a big inspiration to me. But to answer your question, I think, the practice sessions went from get out there, do your warm-ups, do passive and active stretching. I created some things called skip drills, a bunch of different things to open up arm rotations, work your lower body independently from your upper body, to create some neuromuscular pathways that sometimes are kind of a little uncanny as a thrower. You have to develop those. They're just kind of not a natural type of thing you would do on a daily basis kind of deal. But we'd incorporate those, and then we would do we get in two-ball drill or throwing session, and energy level was down a little bit, so we could really concentrate technically.
Wow. Now, so did Summer try to get you to do any shot put or discus when you were transitioned for being a pole vaulter?
No.
No.
One look at me was like, dude, you're too small. And I acknowledge that. I'm like, there's no way I'm throwing the shot in the discus. I'm just too small for it. I threw the javelin a little bit in junior college for fun. I think it was the old javelin, about 200 feet.
Wow. Yeah.
It scored some points in some dual meets and stuff, but it was never going in, or put it that way.
Gotcha. Now, we didn't ask earlier, what was your best pole vault or your best time in the 100 meters coming out of high school?
Oh my gosh. I think I ran like right at 11 or 11.1. I was,
that's above average.
It's not horrible. I did mostly the relays and stuff, and I was primarily a pole vaulter. They threw me into the relays and stuff. I got a story about that too, which is really funny, but, as my strength to weight ratio got better, the older I got, my speed actually increased a lot, especially like, doing a walk in 30 meter, 40 meter, I got to the point where I was pretty fast, I think, I would consider being a thrower. But from a pole vault standpoint, I think I vaulted 14.6 and I just couldn't get over 15 no matter how hard I tried. And I'm like, at that point, I'm like, nah, this is not going to happen as a pole vaulter. So, and then the thing is about shin splints and, oh my gosh, it's windy today, I'm going to crash and burn. It was just, it got to the point where it wasn't as enjoyable as it was when I first started doing it.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. So when I started throwing, it was like, man, this is way funner than pole vaulting, So,
especially the hammer. The hammer's just fun in general.
For sure.
It's just kind of it is. And it's such an uncommon thing to go from a running and pole vault background to starting to throw the hammer throw. I don't know anybody that's probably ever done that.
Gotcha.
So I kind of laugh about it now. And at the time I had a lot of people, especially when I went to Arizona State and started, kind of moving myself up in the national rankings and stuff. It was like, I get there and they go, you're supposed to be on a track, right? And I'm like, no, I'm a thrower, really. And it was, walking around and there's all these giants out here, So that was a lot of fun, and it was an experience that, I tell my son now, because he's a thrower at Oklahoma. I said, if anything else out of what you get from track and field, it's such a neat sport. You're going to have a ton of experience, a ton of stories. You get to meet a ton of people, and it's just a neat culture to be involved in. And that's what I found, when I threw, it was the culture of the sport, which I fell in love with. So, and unfortunately, it doesn't get the respect by audience participation like football and the major sports do, as you know. And that's why I'm so excited about what you guys are doing. Like, this is amazing. Like, I watched some of the podcasts, and you had Robert Weir on there, and you got Adam Setliff and Mike Stoltz, and you got who's who in track and field. I'm like, you're calling me to be on this show. I'm like, what am I? I mean, these guys are all Olympians. I'm like, I'm not anything like that.
Those are the best.
So
that relates to the kid who wants to go out there and throw, because yours are the
right.
Yes, all those guys are awesome, but these are some of our
and we come across that kid who is 5'10", who is 190 pounds, that coming out of Texas, who's not a D1 football player, and
right.
but he has an avenue of really wanting to go compete. And, where's a niche that he can go out and kind of sow his oats, so to speak. And, if we can pull him into just being a hammer thrower, a shot discus thrower, or whatever on a D2, D3 or junior college, let's go do it and just see if he gets a shot. So
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, there's been some smaller guys, look at Ken Flax, for example.
Mm-hmm.
He weighed a little bit more than me, but he was an Olympian, and he broke the collegiate record. When I was competing, I competed against him in the Pac-10, so there's a perfect example of somebody in a smaller stature that did great things. Koji's, wasn't a huge guy either. There's been some smaller guys in our event that have made it to, the highest of high levels in our sport, which is kind of neat because, like you said, not everybody is, Ryan Krauser, who's 6'8", 330 pounds.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of guys that have that desire and want to be a thrower, but they don't have the body. But, hammer's not one of those things that you got to be a giant guy to do. It's kind of like the javelin. Some of the best guys in the world were 175 pounds, 5'10",
yeah,
and had long careers and broke all kinds of world records,
Sure.
So it's I got to tell you a story. My son was he's a little bigger than me, but in high school, there was a coach that said, maybe you need to do something else. He was around all these big throwers, and he was just a little guy at the time as a freshman, right?
Uh-huh.
And so when I try to motivate him today, I said, remember that coach that said you're too small to be out here being a thrower? Oh boy, talk about motivation and burning in your belly.
Yeah.
That's a fun thing to talk about, because, that's, you got to have the drive and the desire. A lot of coaches can teach you technique and all these things, but they just can't teach you the desire. And I'd rather have a guy with a lot of desire than somebody that's super talented that doesn't have the work ethic.
Gotcha. I want to ask a question. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm kind of curious of how you felt about going to that junior college to be a student athlete and then transitioning, to a Pac-10 or Pac-12 school like Arizona State. Because some people, when we talk to kids, they're like, oh, I'm not going to junior college. I don't want to go to junior college and all that type of stuff. Kind of what was your rationale for going to Mesa? And then also the recruitment from after winning the national championship to go to Arizona State.
Well, when I got out of high school, I was a mediocre track athlete. I think I jumped 13 or 13.6 out of high school or something. And never showed up on the radar. I mean, it wasn't like I was going to get a scholarship for track or anything. So, we didn't have a lot of money in my family. So, the path of least resistance financially was to go to the junior college. And, it was within like 3 or 4 miles from my parents' house. And it just made the sense. And the thing is, in Arizona at the time, they had a really robust junior college track and field circuit. I mean, there was probably there was Grand Canyon College, there was Mesa Community College, Scottsdale College, Pima College, Central Arizona College, and it was a pretty good junior college track and field system. So, and they all had pretty good coaches, and the programs were really good. But, when I started there, I thought, I'm just going to do this for fun. And, I love the sport. I can walk on at a junior college. They didn't have scholarships or anything for the junior college. So, that's kind of how I got involved in the junior college. And one thing led to another, which I never thought it would ever get to that point. And, I started getting some interest, and Arizona State reached out to me, and U of A reached out to me. And again, kind of being a homebody, Arizona State was in town, and they had a pretty good program. So, I went there, and that's what brought me to Arizona State.
Wow. Now, they weren't a big name like they are now or in the past with, the Blue Tricks or the Dumbles and some of the people that came through there, right? Or did you have who was the coach then? Or I don't think there was a coach, right?
Well, Frank Morris, which is a name from ancient times, he recruited me. Him and Len Miller. Len Miller was at Arizona State for a long time.
Right.
He left around the time I got there, and I think he took a job at Nike, I believe, and like went all up the food chain at Nike. But Ron Morris was there, but then he got fired almost within 6 months of me going to Arizona State. And
oh wow,
I don't know what the whole circumstances were. And then there was a guy by the name of Roy Agoya, who was the women's throws coach. And he was at ASU forever. Great guy, great coach. Coach Rhea Stallman, Coach Leslie Denise. They were silver medalist and I think gold medalist at the time. So there was a lot of throwing success actually at Arizona State. So he kind of took the reins over. And then about that time, or actually the year before in junior college, Mike and I were introduced to Stuart Toger, who was the national hammer throw coach. And so really from junior college on, I was in constant contact with Stuart, and we were doing a lot of the things they were doing in Oregon, when Lance and Ken and everybody started training with him, and Judd started really following him as well. And so really, almost everything I learned about the hammer in an indirect way came from Stuart. He had some systems, some ideas, some just solid knowledge base that was, honestly, I think he's probably the greatest hammer coach ever. Wow. And I think a lot of people came out of his systems and stuff. You had, people like Art Venegas showing up to his clinics, and who's who in track and field coaching. He would put them on all over the country. And they were invaluable. He really got hammer on the map for the U.S. Because, we struggled. We didn't have any national hammer throw director or anything like that. So, to answer your question was, even though I didn't have a lot of coaching at Arizona State, still had quite a bit of coaching help from the university. And compete there for a little while, but we still talked and trained together when we got in town and all that kind of stuff.
So for us laymen who don't know that much about hammer, could you talk a little bit about his different systems and his what are you referring to with that?
Sure, yeah. When he started talking about some concepts, the old school way was looking way ahead of the hammer, and the hammer's hanging out behind you, and we call it dragging the hammer. Mm-hmm. And, the ball would sweep through, and the low point would go way over the left side. And, you were fighting physics at that point. Yeah. And so, he brought it to the point where, listen, the hammer does the work. If, the ball does what you want it to do, but the bottom line is that you've got to let the hammer, and the hammer makes you fast. So, like on the entry, getting the ball to pass through zero, and stay right-sided, which is the low point, doesn't go farther over than maybe your left foot on turn 4. So you start to throw off, it's right-sided, which the right leg is a little bit more dominant in the throw. It's kind of the piston of the throw, And, but the ball sweeping through, especially to start the throw on the entry and keeping your head on the hammer, not getting ahead of it and dragging the hammer. So once the hammer passes, you feel and start pulling you. And it sucks your right foot down in the ground into double support, where in double support from the high point, in the left sector where you catch it, hopefully at 270, working the ball through zero with gravity is the fastest phase of the throw and is really the only part of the throw you can put speed and energy on the hammer. And there's lots of ways to do that, but that's the concept. So, when I coached, I talked a lot about cause and effect, and, but it all comes down to really letting the hammer do the work and not fighting the ball. So, and to answer your question, Stuart really, I think, brought that to fruition as far as, the concept and, how that's affecting the speed of the ball and how, ball flies farther because of it and everything else.
Okay. Now, what was his thoughts on the footwork and stuff?
And stuff. He was the inspiration. Well, I mean, once that starts happening, the axis stays on balance. Mm-hmm. And so then you can really tighten the footwork up and find your back pressure positions and your balance positions better. Find double support earlier. He talked about, just keeping the right foot rotating and staying square on the hammer, and being patient with it. So all of those things create a lot more energy on the hammer and a lot more speed on the hammer. So
awesome. Mm-hmm. Well said.
Yeah, I'm thinking if someone wants this who doesn't throw hammer, because a lot of our people in Texas, they're like, I thought you just held on and turned in circles. What is this?
Right, exactly. Right.
That's the reason we have him on to change.
We need more kids.
And I love when I meet somebody that is really eager to learn more about the hammer, and you open them up to some of these concepts because maybe they don't have access to talking to the right people and so forth, and you watch like almost immediately how it cleans up a lot of parts of it, which is like, and they get immediate feedback from a few little keys, which is really exciting to me, when that happens and stuff. So, it's always a never ending learning process. I mean, the sport's always evolving and that kind of stuff. I mean, as like shot put is too, look at Ryan's, what he's doing right now. And, so the hammer's no different, but I think there's certain basic concepts that have to be mastered. And then from there, you tinker a little bit.
Gotcha. So getting back to your throwing career, did you tinker with weight? Did you do much with weight or short wire during the indoor season and stuff like that when you were there at State?
We didn't throw indoor season. I never threw any weight. I did a little bit of training, pud work and stuff. Again, being my size, that's just kind of a big man's event as well.
Yeah.
But I did do a lot of, heavy ball work, light ball work. I really love throwing the 14 and the 15, especially the 15. It felt like anything I could throw with the 14, for sure the 15, but even the 14 at a certain point, I could throw with the 16 with adrenaline and meat. That was a good gauge for me.
Gotcha.
Heavy ball work, I probably should have done more heavy ball work, but again, being small, it was just tough on me. I couldn't get out there and throw, 40 throws with a 20, for weeks at a time in the fall phase or something like that without just breaking down my body really hard. Bigger guys can handle that kind of stuff. So there was always that balance, but I know that I knew that you had to work some heavy ball. And also we had a 28-pound weight on a half or 3/4 wire. I threw that a lot because I could create some speed on it and it was still pretty heavy.
Yeah.
I did that a lot in the off season in the summer and stuff. That was a lot of fun throwing the 28 on a short wire. So
wow. What kind of weight training would you do? Just being a hammer thrower, because you're going to train a little bit different than a shot and discus, I'm assuming. What kind of weight training would they implement for you?
Well, we did, primarily the Olympic lifts.
Okay.
I did some deadlifting, not a ton. Primarily, I did pulls from the floor and hang cleans for my cleans. I did high pull snatches. my shoulders were always sensitive, so I always had issues with my shoulders. So I never did a lot of catch, snatch where I caught it. I did snatch high pulls and stuff. It just kind of conserved my shoulders. So I did tons of that. I did a lot of front squats and a lot of back squats. And then from there, the rest of it was, torso work, but I did a lot of putt work for my torso strength. I did some plate work, all that kind of stuff as well. But I did mostly like supplementary upper body stuff. I close grip bench about once every 2 weeks. I did more shoulder rehab stuff. Some lat pull, but not a ton of it because I didn't want to pull in on the hammer at the high point. I wanted to have a more relaxation phase of my throw on the top. So it was mostly squat and Olympic lifts was the bread and butter of what I did.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is it now? Walk us through those last couple of years. Did you make it to the NCAA? Like how'd you do in conference? Did you make it? Out to the championships and stuff?
At Arizona State.
Yeah.
At Arizona State. Yes. Yeah. I went to ASU. I almost immediately, I was a school record holder. I broke their school record. And then I did qualify for the national championships in 85 and 86. And I made it to finals. I think I placed 10th both years. We had a pretty Gustafson. He had good in 86. And, the field was pretty deep, but, honestly, today I look at nationals. I mean, man, the college guys, you got to throw 70 meters or more even to just make it to the NCAAs these days. Mm-hmm. So the depth of throwing is surprisingly deep. Yeah. I think we had a few guys that were kind of throwing a little farther at that moment in time than what I've seen lately. But the depth of throwers that were 69, 70, 71, 72 meter guys, there's a lot of them. Yeah. And that's exciting for development in the hammer in the US. I mean, you can do a lot with that in their careers later, if they get under the right tutelage and stuff like that.
So. Yeah, do you keep up with the girl side? Because the girl side for hammer, man, it is taking off. I don't know if you're aware, Deanna Price just
Deanna Price, yeah, she smashed the indoor. Mm-hmm. I know, that's exciting. I mean, we've come a long way in hammer in general, but the women's side is exciting because they're hanging right in there as the men are moving up. They're coming to that highest level of worldwide status. So I'm excited for the future of hammer in the US. I think it's I worried about it for a while, but now I'm like, they're doing good. They're doing good. And I hope the guys today, like Rudy and Daniel Howe and those guys, I think when they finally get done throwing, I hope they can get involved in the sport and carry on, with their knowledge to new throwers and stuff like that. Because, that's where it's all about. I mean, we need to have this knowledge base keep carrying forward and get better and better. And, we have the guys that can do this now. So I'm hoping that's what happens.
Yeah.
The Texas Track and Field Coaches Association. Coaches education through our annual Winter Clinic, the state's #1 track and field clinic. Texas Track and Field Promotion, our postseason Meet of Champions, lobbying efforts with the state's governing bodies, the Texas Track and Field Hall of Fame. If it involves Texas Track and Field, we're at the forefront. Join our mission in continuing to make Texas Track and Field the nation's best.
Yeah, so after you graduate, what was your plans? And then all of a sudden you wind up being a throws coach at Northern Arizona. How did that transition happen and what occurred?
Well, I was starting to kind of break through in my throwing. And in 87, I started having some technical things changing in my throw that were really, really starting to create some better and better distances in practice and stuff. And I think I landed up throwing in the high 65s or something. And then, but I had some sector fouls in 2 or 3 meets, one at Mount Sac, I think Modesto or something like that. And I had, I threw 70, 71 or something like that. And they were like sector fouls, like a foot outside the left sector line. I I could not, like, my throw was changing and morphing so much, and I knew really good things were happening. I just couldn't figure it out. And a lot of it had to do with the entry, and I just couldn't figure my entry out real well. And so about that time, I landed up fraction of vertebrae in my back. And I actually broke the spinous process from the body of the vertebrae. And they didn't pick it up on the x-rays at first. And I just started having all these weird things going on. And eventually I ended up having to have my back fused. And so that pretty much ended the career. So I decided to go back to school, and I went up to NAU. I wanted to pursue a different degree. And chance has it, there was a gentleman up there that was the throws coach that got recruited to coach at Colorado, Pete Corkery. And so I took his job over in '89, and I went there. I was there for 3 years as the throws coach. So that was a great experience. Flagstaff, I love Flagstaff. It was a neat experience. They had a kind of a Swedish connection at the time. A guy by the name of Ron Mann, he was the head coach at the time, and prolific coach. And anyway, he had a connection to a lot of the Swedish throwers. And I knew a couple from the junior college circuit, but he had a guy by the name of Kent Larson, who was throwing it there at the time, Henrik Wenberg. And I know Kent ended up, and I talk to him sometimes still, he ended up being a 2-time Olympian in the shot put, and he was not a big guy. He was like 5'11", like 220. But man, talk about fast. In fact, I landed up reaching out to him about a month ago. We were talking about our kids, and I had no idea his kids were throwing the hammer. They're a little older than my kids. And he's following my son, and I said, "Man, Ken, I wish I would have known your kids were throwers. I would have followed him at the time."
Yeah.
But I said, and man, if you were like 6'6" and 300 pounds, you would have thrown 90 feet. So he starts laughing. He goes, "Yeah, it's something I battle. I probably picked the wrong sport, But his success was tremendous for being his size. So.
Wow, awesome. So what was it like to kind of be a recruiter, and did you feel like you had an eye for talent back then? And then, where did the experience come for shot and disc for yourself when you kind of didn't primarily throw that, during your college days?
Yeah, that's a great question. Where it really kind of started back at Mesa Community College. That was kind of a hub of a lot of Olympic and hopeful Olympic throwers were training there at the time.
Oh.
There was a gentleman by the name of Gary Willicke. He threw 68 at Arizona State, actually. And then after he was done competing, he started training at Mesa Community College. A guy by the name of Zane Hubbard, he was a 68-footer in the shot. He trained there like every day. Mike was throwing there. They had a guy a long time ago, even a little before I started, but he showed up once in a while. Ron Simkew, he was a 70-footer. So, knowing a lot of those throwers at the time, and they would always be around and training and stuff. We get done throwing, we'd sit in and watch those guys throw and talk to them, and they'd talk technique, and we'd say, "Hey, this is what I saw, and what are you feeling?" kind of deal. And we'd all self-coach each other when we were out there and stuff. So. The throws are funny because the hammer is kind of one of the events that don't act the same as like throwing. When I coached, I always talked about like throwing the shot, throwing the discus, throwing the javelin is no different than throwing a baseball, a football, swinging a golf club, swinging a baseball bat. It all starts from the ground up, right? And the last part of it is the implement, or whatever you're throwing is the whip coming through. And I always said, throwing is like grabbing a big bull whip, and you crack the bottom in the skinny part at the end, just stays there for a little bit, and right at the very end, whoosh, it comes through. So that philosophy, I think, is pretty applicable to most of the other throwers. The hammer is the one kind of exception. You don't want that separation in that stretch reflex feeling, like you do in the other throws. So everybody tries, that's why hammer is so difficult, I think, because everybody's trying to fight their natural tendencies, that throwing tendency to find that stretch reflex, and you hit your hips first and that whip comes through. In the hammer, that's called dragging the hammer, and it just doesn't work. So that's why it's I kind of giggle about it, because it's just one of those odd events that just don't act the same, So,
Awesome.
but to answer your question, it was primarily lucky enough to be around a pretty big volume of pretty elite throwers.
Yeah.
So
Soaking up all the knowledge.
For sure.
right, exactly, yeah.
For sure. So you was at Northern Arizona for 3 years.
Mhm.
Did you produce a couple of great hammer throwers? Is there anybody right off the top of your head that
at the time we didn't, the guys I had, we didn't have like, they kind of were more multi-event guys. They specialized more in the shot and the discus. The hammer was more of, hey, we'll throw it to score some points, and, the weight indoors to score some points. I wasn't, we were really pretty full scholarship wise, with the throwers, with some of the Swedes we had. So he wasn't out there recruiting, at the time I was there real actively for another thrower. So they were, I think when I was there, they were sophomore or junior maybe. And then, Henrik, and then we had another guy, Anders Axel. He was also Swede. He was like a 62 footer, in college. And so we had 3 pretty solid throwers, at the time. So he wasn't recruiting any. And so I did what I could with them in the hammer. But, as Flagstaff's at 7,000 feet, and there's snow on the ground till the end of March.
Yeah.
So, we didn't have a lot of time outdoors, and we didn't have an indoor. I think right now, oh gosh, I can't remember the coach now at NAU, but I think, they have an indoor net and everything now that they can throw in. At the time, we couldn't throw the hammer indoors.
Yeah.
So
Brad
wait
Foot's the
till the
current
snow. Is that who it is? Yeah. I met him last year and talked to him a little bit, because I told him, I used to coach at NAU, and he's a good guy. And he's done a great job with that program, by the way. But we didn't have any place to throw, the hammer inside. And so we had to more or less wait till the snow melted before we could get out there.
Wow.
So
So what brought you to Texas? You get out of coaching, you come to Texas, you've been in real estate for a while. You've coached some masters, you coached at UNT. What's been going on lately?
Well, when I came here right out of there, I went to work for actually an investment banking firm for a short time, and didn't really care for that. But then, I kind of found real estate, and I've been doing that for 28 years. So, I got married, about 2 or 3 years after I got to Texas, and started raising a family, and, was fully engulfed with, small kids, 3 of them.
Yeah.
Everybody was playing soccer, and, we were overscheduled, as most parents are. And I kind of got away from the sport. And then when my oldest son was about 4 or 5, we kind of found Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And so I started bringing him there. And I had some other things, health problems. I had a hip replaced. And so after that was kind of healed up, I started training. So I trained for about 10 or 12 years and got my black belt there. And then that took me all the way when the boys were into high school. And then I started coaching them again in track. And, I had couple spinal surgeries. I had 3 of them now. So that jiu-jitsu was kind of over at that point. I had just too many, I had to conserve the little bit I had left, put it that way. So I started coaching them in high school. My son was a pole vaulter, so that was a lot of fun for me to start coaching him. He's about 2.5 years older than my middle son. And then my middle son said, Dad, I kind of want to be a thrower, and I want to throw the hammer. And I'm like, oh, you do? That's awesome. So I started coaching him in the hammer his end of his junior year in high school, and then COVID hit and all that kind of stuff. So he lost his senior year in high school. So we kind of went out there and found where we could throw, and started coaching the Masters throwers around that time. Awesome. Started coaching Eric Cole, and coached him for about 3 years, and we still talk all the time. And I'm sure I'm going to still help him out whenever I can. But that's how I started getting back into coaching again, really my kids, and fell in love with track and field and throwing all over again, which is amazing. And that, that led to, meeting the UNT coach, and
Yeah.
he kind of sought me out. He wanted some help with the hammer. He knew I was coaching my son, and I was coaching Eric Cole and Hondo, and some other people actually. But he said, hey, can you come out and spend a little time with my guys? Oh, I lost you. And so I did, and he was it was Coach Kelso, and so they put me into, I guess, an official volunteer coach position.
Nice.
Just the hammer. So, and I love the fact that he was open, and he was, there was no ego to get in the way. It was just, he just wanted help, and I tried to teach him everything I could about the hammer, and he was so ambitious and so wanting to learn, and it was just great environment. I loved being out there at UNT, and then the head coach got fired or whatever happened, and right at the end of that season, and they got Tipton, so they did okay. Yeah. But they didn't ask me back, which I understand. So that kind of ended my little 1 year UNT stint out there. But it was a lot of fun though. I loved doing it. It was so much fun.
That's awesome. I have to ask, how would you approach coaching a master's thrower versus maybe coaching your own son? Because we talked earlier about being a speed event, and I'm sure your son's movement was not as fast as Eric Cole's, even though Eric was maybe above average for his age. Yeah. So you talked about systems earlier. Would you change the system a little bit, maybe based on what you saw by the thrower, the aptitude, per age?
Well, I think at that age, there's just so many things going on, because you just can't train the same way when you're.
Eric's like what, 85, 90 years old?
Eric's quite a bit younger than I am, but I think he's 53, right? I'm 60.
I love you, Eric. I love you.
No, and listen, Eric can move for a fat guy, yes, right? I mean, an old guy and a fat guy. Yeah. I call him fat because we always joke, but because he weighs remarkably more than he looks. Really? And I was shocked when he told me what he weighed. And I'm like, wow, you do not look like you weigh what you weigh. And he can move, for a 53-year-old, I think he is now, he can really move. But what we did with him was, there was a couple things. He was dragging the hammer a little bit. He wouldn't let the ball pass. And, once he started letting the ball pass and open up his left side of the throw, the ball started doing more and more of the work. And all of a sudden he's like, wow, and it made him faster actually, by just from the technical changes that took place. And it wasn't as hard on his body. He said, man, I just threw that and it didn't even feel like I was throwing anything. Like before I was like, oh, everything hurt. I'm dragging it. It's like, it feels heavy. I'm fighting the hammer. But really when we got him, when he's in tune, and really things are going well for him, his comment to me, I was like, yeah, I just don't feel the ball. It just kind of jumps out of the bottom and takes off. And I said, that's exactly when you're in the system. It shouldn't feel like it has any weight. And that's when I say it becomes a speed event. You're not fighting the forces of the hammer anymore. It's doing the work. You just hit it at the right time and add a little bit to it. And so he started really finding that, especially the last year or so when I worked with him. And so, you can still teach an old dog new tricks, which is kind of fun, right? Yeah. But we laugh a lot because he always reverts back to some of his bad habits. And I said, man, I sound like a broken record out here. I just tell you the same thing every practice. I mean, and he laughs. He goes, I know, I'm working on it.
Well, but with your son, it had to be totally opposite because he didn't have any bad habits because he was so new to the sport.
Yes, that's what's exciting. When you have any bad habits, and everything feels like what you taught them, and when it's working right, that's how they feel it should be. They don't know any different because they haven't ingrained all these bad habits. It's really hard when an athlete has thrown incorrectly for a really long time, because you have these neuromuscular pathways that are so ingrained. So you've got to kind of back all the way down to the most basic things and act as if they've never thrown before and reestablish kind of new neuromuscular pathways for the ball to move right and everything else, and be patient and let the ball do the work. And that's a fight. That's the biggest fight athletes have when they're making a big technical change, when they've had some really bad habits for a while. That's why I'm so excited about what you guys are doing, coaches, junior high coaches, and you're getting them more and more and more the right information so that when they start these kids off, they're learning more correct technical things in their throws, so that when we get them later as a coach and they're in high school or college, we're not having to fight as many of these habits that are tough to break sometimes. So kudos to you guys. I mean, I just think that's just incredible.
So I'm just curious, because I want to know what you'll answer this. You get a new kid, no experience at all. Do you just basically start with the winds and maybe they do on heel, toe, and turn and release, or are we even more vanilla than that?
Well, drilling, doing left hand, right hand, 2-ball drills, walk-ins, those are pretty difficult to master. So the first thing I have them like, hey, this is what your footwork is supposed to look like. This is how the ball's supposed to move.
Yeah.
Here's a low point, here's a high point. This is 0, that's 180. Just keep your head on the ball, move around and try to stay focused on the ball. See the ball 360 degrees and do it 1 turn, 2 turns. How many, we'll add 1, do 1 turn, we'll add 2 turns. Well, whatever it takes. And then, they're throwing at a real low level. Maybe they can get through 2, maybe 3 turns, and the ball's starting to move. They're starting to feel, oh yeah, this is, I'm throwing it in the right direction. It's actually going down the middle, I think they have to have a little bit of volume of just throwing it before you break them down real hard and start breaking down the technique. Gotcha. In 8 million ways, because they have to come from a reference of some feeling and how the ball moves and what it feels like and how they have to counter the pressure of it and all that kind of stuff. They've got to feel that for a while. I think when I first started, honestly, I think he gave me that 28-pound on a short wire, and he just said, go out there in the field or wherever you're going to do it and just throw it as far as you can. Just keep throwing it until it goes farther. I'm like, okay. That was probably a little unsupervised to do that, but I think from a throwing standpoint, they've got to feel something first, and then you got to see, okay, now I kind of see what I have to work with. Now let's break it down a little bit. We'll throw some drills in. We'll back it up a little bit. At least they have now some feeling and they understand how the implement moves and where it's supposed to go and all that kind of stuff. Nice. So when you take somebody that has no experience, never thrown before, and you start drilling them, they feel real robotic. They don't really feel anything. Yeah. So they have to have some reference points to do that. So
nice. So we're big advocates of Hammer. Yes. And we're trying to growing it in the state, and actually trying to even get Texas to allow it in the high school, which we know will never happen, but we can dream. What advice would maybe you give some high school coaches maybe listening to you about, like, okay, hammer drills over here? Is there a resource you would suggest? Is there a book you would suggest? What would you kind of throw out there if they were interested?
Are you talking respectively about the coaches or the athlete?
Well,
maybe both.
Both.
It may be different.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Both. Either one. Yeah.
Well, I know that like javelin and the hammer are not high school events, and at least in Texas, and there's a huge danger factor, and I get that. But I think there's a lot of throwers that, maybe body stature wise probably are going to be difficult for them to get to the collegiate and post-collegiate levels. So, but they're great athletes and they've got a really good strength base, and they're they've still got some decent size, maybe, they're going to grow into their body a little bit, put a little muscle on, you can see what you're going to get, but they can move faster, athletic. Those guys, I think, we need to, as a coach in high school and in junior college and junior high school, but primarily in high school, we need to identify those kids and say, hey, listen, there is another event here that I think you would be perfect for. Litvinov was only 5'10", 235 pounds. And, so I think that, these high school coaches could encourage that, introduce them to say, hey, go online, maybe take a look at hammer throwers. All the guys that are ranked, in the world right now, we didn't have any of that when I threw. I wish we did, but they can look and see like anything they want. There's instructional videos, all that kind of stuff. And from a coaching standpoint, I would love to see high school coaches try to learn even those events, the javelin and the hammer, just because they can be very inspirational for kids moving forward. That maybe shot and disc is tough for them in high school because their size. And, so that way they have some light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I can be a hammer thrower. I'm going to still train. I'll throw with the throwers, but, maybe on the weekends, I'll go buy a hammer and start playing around with it. And, and the coaches can encourage that. And, you have all these masters like Carol, she's got a great facility, Atlas Field. And, you can find, there's a will, there's a way. They can find places, heck, my son, we went to a park and we're throwing off a slab of concrete into a field because we couldn't find any place to throw. But you can figure it out, right? So they could do that on the weekends and start picking up on the event a little bit because, man, I'll tell you, as a collegiate coach trying to recruit, hammer throwers are slim pickings, because they don't throw it in high school.
Yeah.
So, when you see that guy's throwing 60 meters, 62 or 3 meters or 58 meters in high school, that's like, wow, that's, and it's the trifecta if he's got body stature and stuff that he can throw the multis, right? So, so that just increases their ability to maybe earn scholarships too, because they have, another event that maybe they didn't think about that they can develop.
Gotcha. Nice. Great.
So that's where you guys come in, right?
We're trying.
We're trying. We've got our young ones just kind of like
doing hammer drills, doing a lot of the walking drills, 1 turn, 2 turns, and stuff like that.
We got 7th graders and 8th graders like, we're doing what? We just go over there and do it while you're waiting.
Yeah.
It's just
right.
Just watch them and do that.
We introduced
that's
awesome.
awesome.
And stuff like that. Question for you on the opposite side, being a parent of a college athlete.
Mm-hmm.
What is that experience like? And then also too, what advice would you give parents who may be listening to you right now or will be listening to you on having that kid say, okay, I'm not that good, but how do I get my kid into college just to maybe go the junior college route and all that type of stuff? Because, the game has changed from when I was in college, when you were in college. You're living it right now. Coach Nina, I love Andrew, one of my guys, but what has that experience been like being a parent? Then, what kind of maybe advice would you give other parents?
Well, the experience for me was, I guess I'm kind of in a unique situation because I, had some coaching experience. So, like when my son first went to Arkansas, he was, I got to coach him. When Mario was there, Mario was all about, hey, come on up and, we'll video coach and come on up in person and coach. And that's where I met Eric Sullins and started coaching him. And, and I got him from probably around 70 meters or so with the 14 through at 80 meters with the 14.
Yeah.
And, so since my son was there, Eric was training as a post-collegiate athlete there, trying to train for the Olympic trials. And so they were very open to input from me. I mean, Mario was awesome. And then he left, and then Geffy was there after him.
Mm-hmm.
And Coach Gefford was like, come on up, man. I'm good, And so, and Nino's been, I've been kind of a little more hands off, but, he knows I video coached Ben a little bit, and I came up there and, and work with him a little bit, and him and Bailey, and Nino's okay with it. I mean, as long I'm not stepping on anybody's toes, but it's a little different than some parent that maybe has no experience coming and trying to coach his kids or something. So I've been pretty blessed that way, which, I've been pretty involved. And for most parents, because this is kind of a quirky event, the Hammer, and who knows about the Hammer, right? I mean, they should seek out, people, locally that may know the event, and, Eric Cole was coaching some youth program in Flower Mound for quite a long time. And so, getting together with somebody like that, a past thrower that does something like that or whatever. I mean, reaching out to some of these coaches like you guys, for example, and whatever, to encourage them to start going to some clinics and being a student of the event, looking on the internet. There's tons of coaching stuff. I mean, you got to look at the right stuff, obviously, but there's a will, there's a way, and I think you can do a lot from that perspective. And, it's kind of a fun experience because I think, even if you're not a thrower, as a parent, if you're very interested in it, you can go kind of through that learning process when they're first getting introduced to the event with some local coaches that know the event, or online training, or videos that you're watching, trying to emulate or mimic what those guys are doing. And that's a lot of fun. That's a lot of good quality time between the parent and the athlete. So, but at a certain point, obviously, you've got to kind of relinquish. He's out of the nest and put him in somebody's, some good hands and stuff. So, we've been so blessed in Texas. We've had some new coaches coming into Texas the last couple of years. John Frazier, is a good example. He's an Art Venegas guy. I competed with him when I was. He was at UCLA and I was at Arizona. You look at, Robert Weir, an SMU guy, and he's coached forever. I mean, we've had such great development out of Texas. You look at, who's who. I mean, right before I got in this thing, I called Eric Solons, actually, since we still talk a little bit, and he was at Ryan Krauser's house. And so, I guess Ryan's parents were in town today. They came in. And so, I was talking to Eric a little bit, and then I told Eric, hey, congratulate, for me, Ryan on his world record. And so, that kind of stuff is, we've got such a wealth of information that came out of Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing, actually. It's like a who's of the throwing world in a lot of ways. So, you've got, Emma Sawala, what is it? Sawala. She was Marcus, right? And, Adam, you're right. Yeah. I should know that because she's like 5 minutes from me. But I saw her develop from just a teen, like a sixth, seventh grader all the way through, and, Adam Setliff is coaching her. And, I mean, can you get any better, right? I mean, and we have all these tools and all these people in Texas, and there's all these resources. And I love it because I think, they're all accessible if you can work on it and seek them out. I think most people are happy to help. And, and here's a guy that, I mean, you look at Dave Woolman.
Yeah.
Dave Woolman's got his online tutoring and coaching and stuff. I first met him when he was at Stanford. And, then he was at SMU for, so, man, another wealth of information right here in Texas, right in the DFW area. So I think to answer your question is these younger throwers, there's a lot of resources there. So, we need to tap into this, and these people because they're wealth of information. So.
Great point.
True.
Great point. Well, man, what a awesome time. Thank you so much. So,
you're welcome.
So you're who you're working for now currently as a realtor?
I work under the umbrella of Remax.
A Remax, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you have a certain area, or can you go all over?
Yeah, I actually I've been in this area now for like 28 years. I'm working. I work like Flower Mound and Highland Village and Argyle, that kind of neck of the woods on the north side of the DFW airport, kind of Denton County. So this whole geographic area.
Growing area.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it's real estate is always growing. There's too much land in Texas. It just keeps going.
Awesome.
That is true. There's a lot
Yeah.
of land.
For sure. Well, Dave, thank you so much for being on.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you guys so much for having me on. I mean, I probably talked too much, but it was a lot of
You
fun.
did awesome. No, you did exactly.
Yeah, we love it.
I know. So
That's
maybe I
crazy.
could come out of retirement and beat Eric Cole and hammer it. That's
I don't
no, I would say, all right.
You know what?
I
told him.
Carol. I would go after Carol first and try to beat her in the disc, then work my way down.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. She, wow, what a stud she is, huh?
Yeah, for
Or
sure. She's
stud
still,
or whatever you want to say. Yes, she's amazing. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
she's still going strong for sure. She just
I
had a
know.
birthday this week.
Yes,
Too.
yeah.
Yeah.
We go out to Atlas Field and throw out there.
Yeah.
We take
Yeah,
our
that's-
young kids. We took I have a 10-year-old girl that we
Right.
this past spring, or it was a few weeks ago, not spring. They went out there and she threw shot and disc. You got her, and then the 80-year-old men throwing. It was just a fun experience. Hopefully,
It's so neat. There's so much energy there, and watching a 80-year-old still can move pretty well. That's impressive. I love it.
Oh yeah.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, it is for sure, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We
All
appreciate
right.
it. And if you need anything, let us know.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Bye now. Okay, you bet.
We'd like to thank Dave Ryer for being on. Appreciate it for episode 92. What a tremendous passion for Hammer
Yeah.
and the knowledge and the background that he shared. I like the fact that he's kind of emphasized it's a speed event and finding the system and all that. And great drills, suggestions that he walked us
I
through.
would love to have him. I wanted to say, hey, stand up and demonstrate what you're, because I could envision like the 2-ball drill and stuff, but
I
picture to somebody.
I think too, he's a perfect example of that athlete coming out of high school who was a pole vaulter, sprinter, but wasn't good enough on the front to be in the collegiate level, and kind of the event kind of found him and being at the right place at the right time. And I think if you have a passion for the overall track and field, there's an event within track and field that I think that might be able to find you and fit your needs. And it was definitely for success for him for winning that championship, going to Arizona State, competing in the Pac-12 for sure.
Like I said, didn't pick up the hammer until college.
Yeah, so college.
And now that passion and shares it with
Yeah,
others
I
and
know.
coaches and has that opportunity.
For sure. So
Exciting. Thank you so much for being on. All right. Thank our sponsors for season 6, right? Can't believe we're on episode 92. Texas Track and Field Coach Association. Go to ttfca.org for all the latest. We got the 2023 outdoor season starting, high school stuff. So find schedules. Meets have been going. We have second week in high school meets. Hopefully it'll eventually get warm around here and go enjoy some track weather. Need some implements, fourthrows.com, quality implements priced right. Use the code TalkingThrows10 to get 10% off. Porta Circle, you got a lot of kids out at your middle school. Oh, you can bring it up. Get a Porta Circle. They need something to do. They don't do well standing around and only one ring to get in, right? You got to keep them busy. Get you a Porta Circle, put it on the sidewalk. They can do drills over there, so there's not as much horseplay in between throws. If you're in the Austin area, go to Ready Up Athletic Development. Call Zach Phillips at 512-507-8347. And then make sure you look at his Train Heroic and his basic throw strength program. And use that code Throws10 and you'll get 20% off of that great program that Zach Phillips has. And then another big shout out to Big Frogs, the Collie.
Hello, Talking Throws Texas podcasters. I'm Bruce Caldwell. I'm here today to introduce the Fiber Sport Discus. Yes, many of you thought I only made great vaulting poles. I have been bringing quality discuses to the throwers' hands for over 40 years. First as Cantabrian USA representative, then for the past 10 years as the Nelco discus distributor. I introduced the yellow-plated discus for the plastic's best durability. If your Fiber Sport discus breaks, we replace it. Our studies have reached into the science of using a wind tunnel and adding microchips to the discus to find the spin, the gravity, the flight stability of the discus. We have found it's not about rim weight anymore. It's more about creating a balanced stability to allow the discus to fly and surf the wind. Our new FiberSport discus is made to be selected to fit your needs, no matter the weather, no matter the conditions. Check out our discus selection guide at fibersportdiscus.com and find a dealer in your area that sells our fine product. Thank you, Jason and Janelle, for allowing me to talk with your listeners on Talk and Throws
Thank you
Texas
for
Style.
everybody that reaches out to us. Get you some lessons.
Yeah, and also remind about
Apparel.
the apparel, but also the YouTube channel. We're on YouTube, so please be sure to go subscribe to that and watch us. Give it a thumbs up, and then also Lifting DFW. I am doing Olympic lifting lessons, so if you're an athlete who wants to get the edge in any sport that you do, needs to put on the weight, be more explosive, please reach out to me because our programs are having success. The kids are seeing results, and hopefully I can do the same thing for you.
Yep. Is that it?
That's it.
Awesome. Have a marvelous day.